Morning, all my friends in the Tri-Cities of Washington. I'm here this morning because I was very lucky to receive a gift of a large quantity of onions from a neighbor. And having seen a lot of people posting on our local Facebook pages about having challenges getting supplies, I thought I could do another canning video and show you what I've decided to do with these onions. I am going to be canning in my pressure canner this morning French onion soup. There are a lot of recipes for canning onions. They all must be pressure canned, not water bath canned. And I certainly invite you to try any of them. But today I'm doing French onion soup only because it's something that myself and my husband, who is videoing me, thank you so much, Michael, you're an amazing video guy, we eat that. So there's no point in canning something that you're not going to eat. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the supplies I've gotten together here. Again, I must emphasize cleanliness. Before you start your canning project, you need to completely sanitize and clean all of your instruments, your sink, all of your tools, everything. Stove, your pots and pans. I want to talk about pots and pans specifically for this recipe because you're going to be caramelizing some onions, and I am fortunate to have this old Revere standby with a copper bottom. There are a lot of newer cookware that is the cast enamel cookware, which for me, because I have a disability, is very, very hard for me to pick up, and I'm always afraid I'm going to kill myself or drop it. So this works pretty good, but it doesn't have a very big volume. So I have to use a larger stock pot after I browned my onions in here first. Augie, settle down. After I browned my onions in this pan first, I dumped them into a larger stock pot, which I'll show you later, just so I don't brown them, because a thin gauge stock pot is almost worthless for browning onions. It will scorch. The other thing I want to mention is when you get your pan out, if it's been in the cupboard for a while, you want to clean it. And I absolutely love Barkeeper's Friend. I clean the heck out of it, the inside of it, and then I use just my regular Dawn dishwashing soap to make sure that I got all the residual Barkeeper's Friend out of it. That's really important. Today, the recipe I'm going to be using is from the Ball Canning and Preserving book. It is on page 290, and I'm actually making a double batch because I have so many onions. So I wanted to show you kind of how I prepped my onions, give you an idea. I started off for each batch with about 4.5 to 4 3/4 pound of onion. The recipe calls for 4 pounds of onions, but by the time you peel them and cut off parts of them, pretty much you should start with 4.5. So I'm going to cut off my ends, and in canning, when we cut off the root end, we always take off a fairly good sized piece because there's some kind of enzyme or something in that root end that tends to do terrible things to us, so get rid of that. And then the other side I cut, and then I simply cut my onion in half, and I take off the skin of the onion and the first white layer, always. Now that wasn't quite the first white layer. As you can see, the skin is still attached to that. So I'm going to go one section more and get rid of that. And the reason why I do that is under that first white layer, there's always this thin funky stuff. I really don't like that in my food, so I get rid of that. So needless to say, you do the other side as well. And then I just simply take it, turn it, and cut it into pieces. I like a little bit of volume when I bite into an onion in my soup, so I'd say that's, at least 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. Some people like them really thin, and you can certainly do that if that works for you. So I prepped all my onions, and then I browned them in the 1/4 cup per batch of olive oil that's called for in the recipe. And I'll put a link to the recipe in the bottom of the video if I can figure out how to do it. This is only our second video on YouTube, so I'll do my best. And then I dumped it into the big stock pot, and then I did the next batch, and then I dumped it into the big stock pot. And then the recipe calls for, while you're browning those onions, a tablespoon of salt. I did use canning salt. And a teaspoon of pepper per batch. So did that, caramelized them really good. It takes about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes on a relatively medium flame. And again, if you're trying to do it, Michael, would you be so kind as to pan over to the stock pot? If you're trying to do it in a thin gauge pot, you really have to pay attention because those onions will scorch, even with the olive oil in there. So it can be kind of fatiguing standing there stirring it every 2 to 3 minutes for an hour and 15 minutes. So if you got a heavy gauge pot, you don't have to stir quite as much, but please watch it. It will scorch, even in a heavy gauge pot. Okay, can we pause for a minute? Okay, here we go again. Just in case I'm not successful in putting the recipe on, I'll just read it to you really quick so you get it. It's a 1/4 cup of olive oil, 4 pounds of onions sliced, a tablespoon of salt. I did use canning salt. It doesn't indicate here that you have to, I just do. A teaspoon of black pepper and a teaspoon of dried thyme, 3 cups of white wine, and 3 quarts of beef bone broth or canned chicken, beef, or vegetable stock. I'm not a white wine drinker, so they always say, you should taste your wine before you use it in a recipe, because if you wouldn't drink it, you shouldn't cook with it. So here's to your health, everyone, especially in these trying times. Try to be loving and kind and find something positive and constructive to do. Here you go. I'm not a white wine drinker, but it's okay. I might have a glass of that, maybe. Anyway, I did use let's see here, Pinot Grigio from Columbia Valley, the great state of Washington, which we live in. Yeah. And I used a combination of Trader Joe's beef broth, and I had another off-brand of some kind of beef stock that I used. And when I doubled the recipe, I should have used 6 quarts. I only used 4 quarts. Just because I like my soup a little bit more, with more onions than broth. So, go figure. And again, we use very clean, sanitized jars. Today we are doing what's called a hot pack. So I have my stove on 250 degrees. After I washed my jars in the dishwasher, I have put them into the oven at 250, and they've been in there for 20 minutes. So soup has completed its recipe. I always bring my stuff over to the table. It makes it easier for me to work. I don't have a lot of space over here by my stove. And I'm gonna bring my heated up lids and rings, which have been cleaned, washed, and put in kind of pre-simmering water to soften up that rubberized ring around there. I'm now going to place my fresh pressure canner onto the stove, put it on high so my water gets hot, and I'm just going to set the lid on top of it so that it gets warm. Okay, so this is how I go. Okay, this is how simple this is. I open my oven, I grab one of my jars, and trust me, this comes in really handy, these tongs. If you don't have something like that, you're going to need to put some nuclear oven mitts on. Something like some Kevlar mitt or something, because that is hot. I do use a ladle for hot pack. Makes my life easier. And what I'm shooting for here is about 50% onion to a 50% broth ratio. And I missed a step here that I wanted to go over with you. I've already kind of did this while it was on the stove, but just like when you're making jams and jellies, sometimes when you simmer things, there gets like a funky foam. If Michael, if you'd be so kind, may you please show that? This funky foam here. And what I do is I just pick that up and get rid of it, because I really don't want to eat that, nor do I like it in my jar, because I like my canned goods to look nice, so that if I choose to give them away as a gift, or even I have to look at them, it doesn't gross me out when I look at it. So that's important to do. All right, we're just gonna fill up this jar here. And the recipe does say that you should use your little debubbling tool, but I don't know if that's going to be necessary because there's quite a bit of liquid in here. So let me get one going here. And it indicates that we should be 1 inch from the top of the jar. And this particular thing that I'm using, Mike, if you'd be kind enough to show that if you can, sweetie. It has like a little indicator that helps you. It's like a little cheater that helps you know how the jar is full. So we're good there. And again, what I do is take a nice clean paper towel and some good white vinegar, and I wipe around my ring. Now be careful, because this jar is hotsy-totsy. And I'm not going to worry about doing this step, like I said, because there's so much liquid in here that I don't see a challenge. And I am going to grab me a lid here, hopefully, and a ring. And I want to talk about the importance of waiting until my water, finger tight, ladies and gentlemen, not nuclear tight. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of waiting until I get a little bit of heat in that water, because if I were to take this hot jar and set it into that cold water, guess what might happen? We might have a lot of glass and a big mess, and it is kind of a bummer. You don't want to do that. So while I fill up all these jars and my canning water gets hot, I'll take a pause. Okay, we're back again. I have filled up all the jars and put the lids and the rings on. And I failed to mention yet again that when you get your jars out and put them into the dishwasher, and even when you take them out of the dishwasher and place them into the oven, you want to be checking the rim to make sure there aren't any cracks or pits in the ring, so that when you put your seal on and go through all this hassle of processing your food, it seals and it's safe. That's the most important thing. It's food safe. So now everybody's in the pool. I've filled my jar up to my manufacturer's specifications, and let's see here. I'm going to grab a little splash of white vinegar. I always do that because if I don't, especially in water bath canning, I get this weird mineral film on my jars, and I don't like that. So now it's time to put my canning lid on. This is always fun for me. Now you see what I said in the video I did yesterday, that this is a challenge for me. It's got these little things that you have to line up just so. Oh, it helps if you're putting it on right. Right, Michael?
Yes, dear.
What do our kids say? You got to be smarter than the pot. Holy hell, it's not going to work that way either. Okay, we're going to pause it for a second and okay, like I said, you have to be smarter than the pot. Anyway, finally got it on, and I would encourage you all to follow the manufacturer specifications on your canners to make sure that you get them closed properly. Everything's clean. All the things that are supposed to be open are open and clean, and everything that's supposed to be closed is closed. This is going to start crack-a-lackin', as I call it. And as soon as this thing starts to vent a steady stream of steam, I'm going to count down 10 minutes, and then I'm going to set my weights on top of it. And for my area here in Kennewick, Washington, I require 10 pounds of pressure. So that's what I'm going to do. And after this goes on for 10 pounds of pressure, this recipe takes 1 hour and 15 minutes under pressure. And after that, I will turn off the stove and not touch it until the canner is depressurized, and then we'll see what happens. Thanks.
2, 3.
Well, I'm back again, friends. And today was a great example on how we are not in control. Because right before we paused the video, I heard this little tick sound coming from the canner, and after Michael paused the video, I said, you know what? That didn't sound right. So I took the heat off the canner. It had not got up to pressure yet. Opened the lid, and sure enough, one of the bottoms of my jars had broken out, and there was soup all over the canner. So things happen. Even in a perfect world, people, you hopefully put the right temperature liquid in the jar to the right temperature liquid in the canner, and you don't have one of these situations. However, it could have been a defect in the glass. It could have been just God reminding me that life is not perfect. Anyway, we quickly took the jars out, put them in a hot bath, and rinsed and washed out the canner. And son of a gun, if we didn't start to put the lid on the canner, and I noticed that the pressure regulator was free in the top. It's supposed to go up and down. There's another piece that goes under here with a spring and a washer. Guess what? Somehow between yesterday and today, that's gone. We looked everywhere. I don't know if the dog ate it. I don't know what happened. Maybe it went down in the garbage or the dishwasher. Anyway, we are very blessed that we have Ace Hardware 3 miles down the road. I jammed down to Ace Hardware because they usually stock all the little replacement rings and stuff for this canner. However, they did not have this one. My canner is very old, so their customer service is not open on Saturdays. So I just said, looks like Michael's going to buy me a early Mother's Day gift, and I bought myself a brand new 16-quart pressure canner. Now this one operates differently. So as you can imagine, this one has a gauge and not the little rocker. So as you can imagine, I run in the house and say to Michael, oh, help! And he helped me wash everything out, because it's a new piece of equipment. You got to wash it with soap and water, sanitize it. And we got everything back into the canner again, and we finished off. But I just wanted to kind of explain or just share with y'all that some days don't go perfect, you know, and situations happen. Even when you have the best intentions and you do everything by the book, stuff can happen. Worst case scenario, if I didn't have a store that sold another pressure canner, I could have come home, let those jars cool to temperature, and remove the contents and put them in freezer quart size or gallon size bags and frozen that material. It would not have gone to waste, which is the worst thing that could have happened. So it all turned out okay. It just made me driving home think, you know, being frustrated and everything that's going on right now in our lives. I just had to kind of go over my gratitude list, things that I'm grateful for. I started to recite it to myself to change my energy, to change my attitude. I said, I'm grateful I'm healthy. I'm grateful I have a loving husband and he is healthy. I'm grateful that my husband still has employment. I'm grateful I live in a wonderful neighborhood with an amazing sense of community. I'm grateful that my family and my neighbors are healthy. So we really have to take stock sometimes in the things that we are grateful for, especially on days that become unexpectedly challenging and everything goes to heck in an instant. So I just want to share my appreciation to Michael for keeping me level-headed and helping me get everything transitioned to the new canner. And just saying, I hope this video is helpful to you. If you have an abundance of onions, get them canned up, then you don't have to deal with it on a busy night. Also, that soup, if I find that it's a little bit too oniony or too much onion, I can always add a little broth to it, and I can use that as a base for a roast, you know, in the crock pot. There's a lot of things we can do with that. Michael, would you like to show the finished product there? It's still sizzling away, going crazy. It just came out of the canner. So instead of 7 jars, we got 6 jars, but we are 6 times blessed to have those 6 jars, and we are grateful and thankful. And I just want to wish you all a very, very happy day, and I hope that you are equally blessed and take your gratitude inventory. Bye-bye from Kennewick, Washington.